Our reading today is a great reading. It's from the Book of Uncommon Prayer by Brian Doyle. And Brian Doyle died in 2017. He had been editor of the Portland magazine at the University of Portland for a number of years. His writings, he's a Catholic, and he seems to have a very personal and relaxed relationship with his deity, and this is expressed in his writings, which are quite wonderful. Today's reading, the title is Furious Prayer for the Church I Love and Have Always Loved, but which drives me insane with its fussy, fidgety, prim, 10-eared thirst for control and rules and power and money, rather than the one simple thing the founder insisted on. Granted, it's a tough assignment, the original assignment. I get that. Love. Lord help us, could we not have been assigned something easier, like astrophysics or quantum mechanics? But no, love those you cannot love. Love those who are poor and broken and fouled and dirty and sick with sores. Love those who wish to strike you on both cheeks. Love the blowhard, the pompous ass, the arrogant liar. Find the Christ in each heart, even those. Preach the gospel and only if necessary, talk about it. Be the word. It is easy to advise and pronounce and counsel and suggest and lecture. It is not so easy to do what must be done without sometimes shrieking. Bring love like a bright weapon against the dark. The rabbi did not say build churches or retreat houses or a fleet of cars for general use, or convene conferences, or issue position papers. He was pretty blunt about the hungry and the naked and the sick. He was not reasonable. We forget this. The church is not a reasonable idea. The church should be a verb. When it is only a noun, it is not what the founder asked of us. Let us pray that we are ever after dissolving the formal, officious, arrogant thing that wants to rise, and ever fomenting the contradictory, revolutionary, countercultural thing that could change life on this planet. It could, you know. Let's try again today. And so, amen. And now I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, our very own Cheryl Henry. Cheryl has been an active member of this fellowship since 2007. She retired from a career in corporate training and development and now enjoys facilitating our small group ministry, Chalice. Cheryl, her husband Red, and way too many dogs will be moving back to the island this week. Cheryl.
Way too many dogs, that's right. This past year has cracked us wide open. Without warning, our lives were shut down, out of our control. And what we thought might be a couple of weeks of inconvenience turned into over a year of life-changing events. At last count, 608,000 people in this country alone have died from COVID. And we now have an even more deadly variant on the rise, and yet 46% of the population is refusing to get a vaccine. In addition to the previous administration's mishandling of the virus, which resulted in life-changing illnesses and this incomprehensible number of deaths, we witnessed shocking acts of brutality at the hands of those who are charged to protect us. We watched with mouths agape as a police officer held his knee on the neck of a man for over 9 minutes. It was a sight unbelievable to many of us, but unfortunately not as shocking to African Americans who live every day with the knowledge that a minor traffic stop might result in their death. The murder of George Floyd sparked a worldwide demonstration that Black lives matter. And those of us blind to our white privilege could no longer deny the systemic racism in this country. Thankfully, this has become an ongoing and necessary conversation. We also bore witness to remarkable acts of sacrifice and courage. We saw healthcare workers who were on the front line every day, over and over, putting their own health and the safety of their families at risk to save the lives of strangers. And we learned who the real essential workers were, not just the doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, but the cleaning staff of hospitals, the firefighters and police officers who took people to the hospital, the mortuary workers who loaded 18-wheelers with bodies when their mortuaries were too full, bus drivers, cooks, and wait staff in restaurants who prepared takeout food, and the delivery people who brought that food to our homes, truck drivers who delivered food to the grocery stores, stockers at the grocery store, those young people who delivered groceries curbside or to our front door so we could stay safe at home. The Amazon delivery person who brought dog food, Clorox wipes, and toilet paper to our front door. They even brought things I didn't really need because I felt I had permission to go kind of crazy shopping on Amazon. It was way too busy and I couldn't go anywhere. And by the way, I'm thankful for Amazon, even though I don't hold Jeff Bezos in as high a regard as I do Mackenzie Scott. You know, he took a space ride, but she gave away billions of dollars to relatively unknown nonprofits and colleges. Essential too were the people who continued to pick up the garbage, those workers who kept our water running and our lights on for the most part, and doctors and dentists who continued to tend to minor but urgent medical situations, like the tooth I broke during the first week of lockdown when everyone was saying, for God's sakes, don't go to the dentist. That's the worst place to catch the virus. Your mouth is wide open and germs are spreading everywhere. My dentist said he had an unusual number of patients with broken teeth during those first few weeks of the pandemic. Teeth grinding, I guess, was a common coping mechanism. I personally broke 2 teeth over the course of the lockdown. Then, praise Jesus, we had the opportunity to get vaccinated in early January. It was like the Hunger Games there for a while, scrambling to see who could get vaccinated and who might die because they couldn't get a shot. But things calmed down, and we were really lucky to be close to UTMB here. Their vaccination process was very orderly and efficient. And then came January 6th, the assault on the Capitol of the United States of America by irritated tourists. Some irritated enough to attack police officers protecting our legislators, some of whom may have actually conspired with those same tourists. That's yet to be determined. Then in February, on Valentine's Day, if memory serves me, we had the failure of the Texas power grid and way too many days of freezing temperature and power blackouts. Broken pipes, no water, no electricity, no lights, no heat. Not so much a rolling blackout as they promised, but a sudden and continued power outage that resulted in the deaths of almost 200 people in the state that claims to be the energy capital of the country. So when you think about the events of this past year, we've been through hell. Emotionally, we've experienced shock, fear, anger, frustration, sadness, loss, grief, and then some hope with the onset of the vaccine. It's understandable that what we've been through this year has taken a toll on everyone, some much worse than others. And some of our emotions have spilled over into our relationships closer to home, our family, our friends, our relatives who refuse to get vaccinated, our colleagues, even our loved ones here in this fellowship. Tempers are short, comments can be cutting, emotions are still raw, I'm finding. We've been isolated so long, maybe we've forgotten how to get along with each other. Maybe we're somewhat shell-shocked and have lost our ability to have compassion for those who might still be suffering. You know, we talk a lot about things getting back to normal, but what is that? What does that even look like? Do we need a new understanding of normal? Even now, being here in church seems a little different. And frankly, I feel a sense of loss. We're missing some familiar faces, some forever. And some people just aren't comfortable about coming back to in-person services yet. And I really miss being here in the sanctuary with everyone in person. If we ever doubted the veracity of our seventh principle, that we are part of an interconnected web of existence, that lesson has been drilled into us every day for over 500 days. We are connected. What touches one affects us all. We are responsible for each other and for every living thing. The American novelist and poet Wendell Berry said, "You have to be able to imagine lives that are not yours." That's fundamental to forgiveness. This has been sort of a guidepost for me during this year, imagining the lives of others, trying to imagine the lives of those workers who couldn't stay home, who had to mask up and risk their lives every day to get food and toilet paper for the rest of us. Trying to imagine the frustration of nurses and doctors who worked long, impossibly difficult hours for months and are now back on the front line trying to save people who refuse to get vaccinated. Trying to imagine the life of a sanitation worker or a bus driver who continued to work for minimum wage, unsure if he was taking the virus home to his family. Trying to imagine the lives of those who lost their jobs, children who couldn't go to school and as a result didn't have anything to eat, parents who couldn't go to work because they couldn't find childcare. Trying to imagine those lives. I know you're familiar with this quote by Albert Einstein, but please allow me to read it again. A human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of understanding and compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Jack Kornfield, one of my favorite meditation teachers and authors, wrote this: expanding our spiritual practice is actually a process of expanding our heart, of widening our circle of insight and compassion to gradually include the whole of life. Being on earth here in human bodies, this year, this day, is our spiritual practice. So these interactions that we're having with difficult people under difficult circumstances have provided fodder for our spiritual practice. Every encounter, every day, we are given an opportunity to grow spiritually, whether we like it or not. Sometimes we must heal our own wounds first to come to some inner well-being, but eventually we experience a natural inclination to serve, a longing to give back to the world. The essential workers we've seen during the pandemic show us what service is like. In the words of Nelson Mandela, "You are a child of God. To live small is no service to the world." Are you living small? Or has your heart heard a different call, a call to service? How will you answer that call? So here's my message. We are undeniably, gloriously connected for better or worse, like a divine marriage. It's a law of nature, a fundamental truth. What affects one affects us all. So what are we to do? Live like that. Live like what you do makes a difference. Live like what you say matters. How you treat people matters. Be gentle with yourself and with others. We've all been through a lot. We must be able to imagine lives that are not ours. I'll close with this blessing from the Irish poet John O'Donoghue. It's entitled "For Solitude." May you recognize in your life the presence, power, and light of your soul. May you realize that you are never alone, that your soul and its brightness and belonging connects you intimately with the rhythm of the universe. May you have respect for your individuality and difference. May you realize that the shape of your soul is unique, that you have a special destiny here, that behind the facade of your life, there is something beautiful and eternal happening. May you learn to see yourself with the same delight, pride, and expectation with which God sees you in every moment. Will you please stand now and join in body or spirit, and let's sing the closing hymn, "For All That Is Our Life." Number 128. Our closing words are lifted from that very hymn. For